Satisfy your need for happiness through your own curiosity with the Ranveer Show. I've reached a point in my own spiritual journey where I truly do not ask for anything material anymore. I want to get married so bad in my heart. If you followed this page long enough, you know how romantic I am, but I've literally stopped asking for that as well, because that is the true form of submission to your own deity, submission to God. We had BK Shivani on the show. She's always given us spectacular conversations. And I asked her for spiritual advice because what the Bhairav Upasana, the Bhairav Sadhana led me into was a phase of thinking where I couldn't visualize much more about what I wanted from my own material journey. If I sat in front of my altar, which is right here next to me, if you're watching the video version of the podcast, if I sit in front of my altar, sometimes I have a piece of tension in my heart that I just submit. I don't ask for anything to be solved. I just give it to God. But when I was younger, if I sat in front of the altar, not only would I have that tension, I would always have burning desires. I want this company to grow this way. God, take care of that. Take care of this problem. There's none of that anymore. Of course, there's a little bit of tension because I'm a working professional, I'm a business owner. But that's about it. I don't ask God to solve that problem. I simply submit to the deity. When this began to happen with me, I thought that I'm at fault, that I'm not being able to create strategies for my own teams, because I personally believe that even strategy first and foremost comes to you from God. At least that's been the case in my own spiritual journey. The further my spiritual journey went, the better my strategies got, the better my creativity got. It was a phase where when I was sitting in front of the altar, there was no wishes. So when I asked BK Shivani this, she said that this is probably the biggest blessing of your life. That you've reached a point where you've truly submitted, where you're allowing God to sit and write your future for you. This is called true submission, with an element of sadhana, with an element of spiritual discipline. And chances are that if your sadhana and your spiritual discipline are in place, it's very likely that the rest of your life falls into place as well. Of course, there's spiritual escapists in this world, but for most people in cities, to simply sustain yourself, you have to back your spiritual discipline along with your material discipline if you want your career to grow as well. The thing with spiritual growth is that it gives you a heap of light. After you're given that heap of light, it's said that it's in your hands to turn it into material gifts if you desire. Is that what you truly want? And it's in this confusion that I find myself as well. There's days where I wish that I could just leave podcasting and leave content creation completely, move out of the city, move closer to nature, and just focus on my sadhana, just focus on my spiritual journey. And then I know that I've signed up for a long-term game. There's people whose livelihoods depend on me, and there's a lot of work to be done. One of the greatest spiritual contributions that your life can have is if you're able to actually change society through the material gifts which are an outcome of your spiritual growth. So you pray to God, you work hard, you earn the money, and you leave the world a better place than you found it. That's the basic duty of any human being, according to me, but more so the duty of anyone who's both in the world of business and in the world of spiritual seeking. When I made my last few spiritual podcasts, I was so sure about stuff. I was sharing my story so openly. With this particular podcast, I didn't prep before the episode. I just wanted to speak my heart out, because that's what this whole YouTube journey has been. It's about sharing all these things very openly with you guys. What I do believe is that I am going closer to Shiva because of Bhairav. It's changing me deeply. I sense so much more fame on a material level in the last 2 years, and this is something I could kill for in the years prior to the fame actually arriving in my life. I feel it's only happened after we've moved into this house. There was a part of me that used to feel that, why didn't this happen earlier? And the more the fame sits in my life and the more it increases, and I know it's going to increase and I kind of want it to increase, but the more it's there, the more I realize that, oh, okay, this means nothing either. Because I'm experiencing it firsthand. I've experienced it secondhand through all the podcast guests that we've got. And as I've said repeatedly, of all the 600 people that I've spoken to on the show, perhaps only the monks are truly happy. Some of the soldiers I've spoken to. It's the monks and some of the soldiers. That's it. No one else is truly devoid of suffering. Talking to so many people, of course the energy rubs off, of course the knowledge rubs off, but the level of joy also gets exposed. Not just through the conversation and energy exchange. There's a lot of conversation that happens outside this room as well. So it's not just what you guys see through these cameras and through these mics. I see their life, I see them up close, I see them as human beings, I see their body language, I see their micro nuanced movements, I see how they react to things. And trust me, everyone is suffering. The monks have the least amount of it, along with some of those soldiers. There's a certain joy in monkhood. If you watch any of our episodes with monks, you'd understand what I'm saying, especially the recent one we did with Gauranga Das Prabhu. I highly recommend all of you watch it. But my point is, the one truth that I've learned is that this realm is built for some form of suffering, and many people might disagree. Many people might think that that's a very negative way of looking at life. But my question to you is, why do you look at suffering as something negative? That's the big realization that I've got in the last 2 years. Suffering is often way bigger in our heads than it is in real life. And suffering of any kind, be it related to your health, be it related to your emotions, be it related to your material life, all of it is an outcome of something you did in this life or something you did in your past life. If there's something that doesn't make sense to you, the suffering related to that something is going to stay in your life until you learn what it's trying to teach you. That's how my viewpoint on suffering has changed. And of course, that's a very privileged viewpoint. I don't have to worry about where my next meal is coming from, which is why I get to think in this way. But what I will say is that I have a public platform. And if I don't share my perspective on the platform that's taken years to build, then I feel I'm not doing justice to this platform. Maybe the core of this whole podcast is detachment, as well as understanding that true knowledge is knowing that you know nothing. The more I podcast, the more I realize that I know very, very little. All I know is that I need to wake up every day, focus on my sadhana, and allow God to take over my life around me. As long as I'm working hard, as long as I have faith in my God, and as long as I'm focusing on my sadhana, everything is going to take care of itself. That's where I am spiritually. I hope that this podcast added value to your life. I honestly don't know about the details of what I spoke, but I just felt like creating this episode. So thank you for listening in. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Bhairavaya Namaha. If you enjoyed today's clip, make sure you check out these curated playlists that we've made especially for you related to the subject that was spoken about in this clip.